When someone decides not to eat out, it's rarely because they don't want food. A lot of times it's because something else won a new gadget, maybe a jacket they really didn't need. Maybe it's a subscription that they forgot they had. Restaurants aren't just competing with other restaurants anymore, they're really competing with everything else in the life of the customer. In today's video, I want to break down the battle for discretionary dollars, how consumers subconsciously budget their spending, and why restaurants are quietly losing visibility to lifestyle brands, even when people still want to dine out. Let's get into the video. All right, let's take a moment to level set what we mean exactly when we talk about discretionary dollars. Discretionary spending is not what people spend after necessities. It's what they spend after they've decided what feels justified, what feels worth the money. And that decision is not logical, it's emotional and it's comparative. Every purchase is weighed against another purchase, even if the comparison happens subconsciously in the mind of your diners. Now, let's talk a little bit about cognitive budgeting because it's really how people actually decide where their dollars go. Now, most consumers, they don't sit down with a spreadsheet. They mentally do bucket spending, right? They say, well, I already spent money this week, or I should probably slow down, or maybe next week. And when they do spend, they compare maybe a restaurant meal versus something they can keep, something that's tangible that they can hold in their hand. Maybe a shirt, maybe a phone upgrade, maybe a home item, or maybe a lifestyle product, something that they see on Amazon. Now, when this happens, restaurants are often at a disadvantage. And here's the problem. A restaurant meal disappears when people do cognitive budgeting, right? A product sticks around, at least in the mind of the customer. And that makes that restaurant purchase feel fleeting or indulgent or easier to postpone. Even when the experience is enjoyable, the value is often harder to see after the fact. Now, lifestyle brands understand this and they capitalize on this fact. Lifestyle brands don't just sell products, they sell identity. They stay visible with constant reminders, aspirational imagery, social reinforcement, emotional framing for their products. Their products often feel less like stuff and more like investments in self image. Restaurants rarely frame themselves this way. The only ones that do are the largest chains that we see commonly in commercials and advertisements. Now, here's the invisible visibility gap. A lot of lifestyle brands are present even before the purchase decision is made. Restaurants often show up after hunger sets in. That's a losing position to be in. By the time someone is deciding where to eat, that mental discretionary budget may already feel spent emotionally, if not financially. Now, recently, this has gotten even worse. Economic pressure amplifies comparison. When money feels tighter, as it does in this economy, consumers become a lot more cautious. They justify purchases more carefully, and they default to what feels worth it emotionally to them. Restaurants often lose when they're seen as optional or an afterthought instead of feeling meaningful. Now, here's why this is really a visibility problem and not a food problem. Restaurants don't lose discretionary dollars because their food isn't good. They lose because they aren't mentally present when people decide how to spend their money. Lifestyle brands compete upstream in identity, aspiration, and memory. Restaurants compete downstream at the moment of hunger. That gap matters more than most restaurant owners realize. So, when you think about the market, it's important to consider what restaurants are really competing against. See, restaurants aren't just competing against other restaurants, price, or convenience, but they're also competing for attention. They're competing for identity. They're competing against other items and the perceived value that they bring. They're competing against emotional justification. The real battle in the mind of the customer is what feels worth choosing at that moment of spend. Here's why experience and memory matter so much. A meal can't be kept, but the memory can. Restaurants that win discretionary dollars, they create experiences that people naturally want to talk about. They become part of a customer's routine and identity. They feel emotionally worth it. They stay top of mind even when hunger isn't present. That's how restaurants can compete with products, with lifestyle brands. It's important to reframe what you're actually selling, right? Restaurants aren't selling food. They're selling relief. They're selling connection. They're selling familiarity. They're selling comfort. They're selling a break from decision fatigue, a break from the constant daily grind. When that value is clear, then the comparison starts to shift. It's important to remember that discretionary dollars don't disappear, they just get reassigned. In restaurants that understand how people actually weigh value quietly, emotionally, and comparatively, they stop fighting for attention at the last minute. In the post pandemic economy, it's critical to remember that good food just isn't good enough anymore. And if no one walks in the front door of your restaurant, then nothing else matters. I'm Donovan Garrett. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.